Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone is good. Hope everyone is okay. Sorry, I am a little late. I mean, it's still 8 o'clock, but slightly later than I would have wanted to get on. I mean, it's been another crazy week, hasn't it? Whether or not you want to talk about in cryptocurrency or in the geopolitical world we find ourselves in, a lot of information has come to light. A lot of rumors have also been circulating. And to be fair, they have been having an interesting impact on the price of Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and everything else. So we're going to have a look at all those. And I don't want to turn this into a rumor mill talking about American politics so much, but unfortunately we have to at least cover some of that side, whichever side you stand on, Democrat, Republican, because ultimately it has an impact on the financial markets, whether that is due to uncertainty or certainty. And the financial markets have a knock-on effect at this present moment with the cryptocurrency markets. So a thing like an upcoming presidential election is going to be a key player. So we are going to have to briefly touch on those. I'll try and leave political standings to one side. Apologies now for any jokes against Joe Biden, but that's just part for the course. We'll also have a look, of course, at the Ethereum ETFs, which launched today. Me and the SEC are just on personal terms, where we always like to do these kind of events when I'm doing a live Avenger call, just to mess me around a little bit. But we'll have a look at what's happened with the information that's coming in. A lot of the information we're going to talk about, I'm going to take with a little bit of pinch of salt, just because till we get to the end of the close of the first day, maybe some of the numbers that we're going to throw around may not be completely accurate, but we'll see where it's going, but ultimately where we may go with the price of Ethereum, certainly with the price of altcoins, maybe even Ethereum for once, having some impact on the price of BTC. There is other FUD that has been out there, and I'll try and cover that as quickly as I can, because I want to, and I promised last week that I would, go back to just having a look at some bigger picture. You know, sometimes we trip over ourselves looking at the ground too much when we should be staring at the skies and looking to see where we're going. So I'm going to try and throw up a few charts there to just hopefully kind of shed some light on where we're going. Now, when I talk about those, and I'll explain it again later on, I don't know when the end of the market is. If I did, I wouldn't be doing this. I'd just be sitting and waiting and enjoying myself. But we will potentially have a look at sort of some timeframes. They may not be the timeframes that we are currently working to. We may be looking a lot closer to where we are at the moment. So again, feel free to comment in the chat box below, or to message me later on telling me that my timescales are totally and utterly moronic. But if you do, I'm more than willing for that. But tell me, where do you see it yourself? And with some of the data that we're looking at. If you have any questions about anything whatsoever, please feel free to jump it in the chat. Also, running just a little poll, where do we think the price of Ethereum is going next? I'm kind of talking, next couple of weeks, not big picture stuff there. We going higher, we going lower, or do you just not know? So please answer that if you get a spare moment, and we'll come back to that one a little bit later on. But for now, let's just jump straight in. Okay, let's have a look. We'll start with BTC. It's always the king. And despite not being the key player this week, I think we should. And this is the weekly chart at the moment. And we've had a nice couple of runs. 2 weeks, nice climb from the dungeons of 53,000 back up to 68,000. Start of this week, potentially running into a little bit of trouble there. And, even on the weekly chart, we can kind of start to draw something there that may see why we're starting to have a little bit of a reaction. Perhaps we've run our course for now on the upward momentum, and that's something that we should certainly consider. Now, the weekly, trying to find some sort of bottom, it's a little bit more difficult, because I can make two coins. I can make two candles bodies connect, but that's not really the best. But we can kind of get some sort of feeling on the weekly, and if this was the daily, I'd be able to draw it like that, and it would look a lot cleaner for you. But kind of that bottoming area at the moment. So we're still in this bull flag pattern. We have just reached to the upper echelons of that pattern, and we've started to see a rejection. 5 and a bit days left on this candle, though, so we can't really take it with too much credence right now. We're just going to have to wait and see how that one plays out. But a logical turnaround point, and we'll have a look at my favorite fib levels and everything else a little bit later on to try and see where that's going. But certainly a move down is on the cards right now. Sorry, not on the cards. That's wrong. It's currently happening. That's what I meant to say. We look at Casper. Casper defying everything else, and it's still showing some great strength. Even on the weekly chart, still looking very promising. Still doing the higher highs. I haven't had my buy that I put in at just under 17 hit at the moment, but I think we may actually get there. I'm liking the candle as it sees right now. I know there's been a bit of activity in the community, swapping over from some Tau into CAS. Maybe that's actually helped keep its head pretty much above water today. But regardless, the overall structure of this since the beginning of the year looking very strong. And that's on a naked chart. We haven't even looked at fibs, EMAs, or anything else. You would to look at that, you'd feel pretty happy that you were in it. So a good place to be with Casper right now. Ethereum. Okay, we are going to talk about Ethereum today. We know that the ETFs launched and it's having a bit of an interesting time. But if I didn't know about the Ethereum ETFs at the moment, I'm still a little bit worried about where the price of Ethereum is, because unlike Bitcoin, which, try and draw that crude representative line, was doing something like this, Ethereum's not actually made it all the way back before. It's actually had that bit of a turnaround there. We're starting to have some form of rejection. Now, yes, I know the Ethereum ETFs is a hype move, and we're going to talk about figures of inflows a little bit later on. But what I would say is maybe there's not been that's not true, as much excitement as what there were in the days leading up to the BTC Ethereum. You couldn't get onto a financial news channel without people talking about the BTC ETFs. Whereas Ethereum, yes, it has been talked about, and someone like myself that's quite immersed in the cryptocurrency, yeah, I've seen a lot of it, but maybe not so much on the mainstream media. So interesting to see how that plays out. If I didn't know about the ETFs, I'd be a bit more worried. But what I would say today is it is one of the only green cryptocurrencies out there at the moment. We are going to talk about inflows a little bit later on. So there's been a lot of volume today, definitely with ETF, which is keeping it away from these, mid-single digit negatives that the rest of the altcoin market seems to be suffering, 5, 6, 4, 5, 7%. This, we're just about a 1% in the green. And then unfortunately, we've got to talk about Tau. And yeah, we've had, again, another good couple of weeks. But as we talked about last week, that 360 level could have been a big turnaround point. It's a 200 EMA, a few other things lining up with fibs and everything else, and that seems to be the case. We are falling back down. I haven't sold any. I still have kept my buys live from 265 to 275. Maybe that's where we get to go down to at the moment, but we'll see when we break down onto the daily charts and some of the low time frames later. We are starting to fall below the support and resistant band that we've been falling back into, below the 10, below the 20, below the 50 EMA on the daily. Not particularly great places to be at the moment. We're certainly going to need some turning around there. And of course, there is on the weekly chart, you could potentially say, well, are we starting to form a right shoulder of that giant head and shoulders there? Still not sure whether or not that's going to actually pay out over the long term, but it's something that we need to be aware of as we go through. We'll come back and cover all of those a little bit later on, but for now, let's jump into the news. And I've already talked about the ETFs. So the rumors were circulating last week. The SEC confirmed the announcement after trading yesterday, say that the ETFs would be going live today. And then at 2:30 this afternoon, UK time, they indeed did go live. Now, interestingly, people like Eric Balchunas, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, sorry for butchering his name there, and others have been commenting throughout the day about what the initial inflows have been, and they've been trying to find some sort of pattern between the BTC ETFs and the Ethereum ETFs. What we have seen, and I'll cut to the chase, I've just before I went live here, which is why I was running slightly late, is apparently we have crossed the $1 billion trading volume inflows for the Ethereum ETFs on the first day. So we can take from that, or I certainly can take from that, that there is some interest. There certainly seems to be some interest within institutions wanting to get involved with this, which is great. That's exactly what we wanted to see. And I didn't really have any doubt that that would be the case. The likes of BlackRock et al., I'm sure, would have done plenty of market research prior to that happening. But ultimately, today is the day in which they have launched. What we've got to see now is it a buy the rumor, sell the news event? And that's exactly what happened with BTC. We'll go over the charts later on. But when they launched at the beginning of January, massive run up to the price. Then it launched. We had 2 weeks going down before we found a bottom, and then it was moon time. Is this now going to be a similar case? I mentioned on Discord yesterday, going into this, And I think I actually might have a screenshot a bit later on. This is the daily volumes right now. But going into this, Grayscale, they had, I think it was, I can't remember, it's like 10,000. That doesn't make sense. It's like 10 billion. I can't remember how much they had, but an incredibly large amount. Maybe it was 10,000. I don't know. Maybe it was. Anyway, of Ethereum sitting waiting to go. They moved $1 billion worth to Coinbase yesterday. We didn't know if that was going to be selling pressure. Now, if we can take what happened with the BTC ETFs, is although there was massive interest, there was huge sell-offs from Grayscale initially. And that might well be where the concern is at the moment. I think that's certainly something that we need to bear in mind in terms of where the direction of the price could go. Is yes, it can be all well and good if we are seeing the other ETFs having strong interest in Ethereum. But if Grayscale are going to sell at the rate that they did at the beginning of the BTC ETFs, then that's going to likely negate any of the positive volume that could have been caused by the rest of the ETFs trying to do that. So that, for me, is the thing that I want to keep an eye on. That is what I'll be looking at in terms of looking at Farscape and Arkham and all of that. Is what are Grayscale doing? Now, Grayscale technically actually have two ETFs. Doesn't necessarily matter. In my mind, I'm just going to treat them as one, and then we'll take it from there. But that's why today, it being its first day, is very hard for us to judge where that's going to go and what. But what is positive from it is the level of interest. Again, after 15 minutes worth of trading, there's a total of $112 million worth of Ethereum ETF shares, whatever you want to call them, that were purchased. This is the breakdown of it. 40 million for Grayscale, Bitwise 25, BlackRock 22, Fidelity 15. There's the second Grayscale one. So there's an Ethereum, there's an Ethereum Mini. I can't remember which way around the tickers are for them. Doesn't necessarily matter. But you can see it was, as I mentioned just a second ago, that number apparently has crossed 10 times that value, and it's now over $1 billion today. So I want to see how that settles out. We'll come across that next week, but I'll certainly be talking about it in Discord tomorrow. But there it is. For any of you that are interested in following this kind of stuff, I'll post the link in Discord. But this is Arkham. If you just go into the search bar at the top and just type in spot ETH ETF entities, you'll get the dashboard. It's very similar to the dashboard we see in everything else, but you'll be able to just follow all of that through. You can track the wallets, etc. And if you follow them on Twitter, they actually have listed out all the wallet addresses that they are aware of to date, all of the Ethereum addresses associated with the different entities, and etc. So definitely worth it. And then again, Farside, I think I called them Farscape earlier, apologies there. Farside have done their own ETF flow, but this updates at the end of each day. And as we can see here, this is how it all seeded out. This is what I was trying to get across with the sort of close to 10, I think this is in millions. So that's going to be what, 10, it's going to be 10 billion, isn't it? Off the top of my head. Anyway, certainly a decent amount from Grayscale when you add those two together. So again, we'll be following those going through. I think ultimately it's a positive step forward for where we're going. I think this will become more and more the norm, in my opinion. And whilst, yes, I don't think it's had the fanfare necessarily that BTC ETFs had, because that was, actually crushing a threshold and a real acceptance from traditional markets that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies were a thing. I actually think that if this, and it likely will be this will become the norm. I think a lot more altcoins likely in the years to come will have their own ETFs, and we'll just see this, and we'll just start to see a normalization of cryptocurrencies. Now, the maxis out there may say that that's not what we wanted. Cryptocurrencies is, to get away from centralization. I completely get that. But a lot of us are also just in this for the money. So, we've got to take it with a pinch of salt. Moving on to perhaps a little bit of FUD that's come out today, and maybe why we've seen Bitcoin's price start to fall and a few others. We've seen another large movement from the Mt. Gox settlements. Another $3.2 billion worth of BTC left their wallets today to unknown addresses. I think people have actually started to track this, whether they be to actually individual people or more to Kraken, etc. Now, again, we knew this was going to happen. A lot of this is going, in my opinion, to crypto OGs who may or may not actually really want to sell, given that they are OGs within the market. And so I think this is just probably FUD. I don't think their reserves at Mt. Gox reserves are now fully depleted, but they are getting incredibly low. So, this type of FUD, it's going to have less and less impact on the market. And I think, once it's all gone, obviously this is going to be a FUD situation no more. But once this was announced is when we started to see the price move down. But that being said, and perhaps this hasn't had enough news on it just because it happened the day before the Ethereum ETFs, but BlackRock recorded a $523 million inflow of BTC yesterday. That's the largest inflow since March, and that's just BlackRock alone, I should add. I'm trying to see if there's a figure that tells me exactly. 7,759 BTC they picked up yesterday. So we're going to talk about big picture later on, but this is my canary in the coal mine. If these guys are still buying, then I'm not necessarily too worried about where we're going. And that is a huge statement that they were looking at. Now, prices are lower today, but they were happy to buy 7,759 BTC yesterday at around about 66, 67,000. Now we're looking at 66,000. It's been down as low as 65,000 today. But they're still confident in doing that. And for me, then, that is where I'm always going to sit until I'm proven wrong. And just another bit of, perhaps legitimacy or confidence that it may give you despite the fluctuation in the price. So this is IBIT, this is BlackRock. BlackRock's inflows for their Bitcoin ETF have now outpaced inflows into the NASDAQ trusts, okay? NASDAQ ETFs. So it's $18.96 billion worth, whereas the NASDAQ was $18.89 billion. So again, I think that's a full legitimacy validation of Bitcoin, rubber stamping to say that this is the thing that is going to be here to stay. The fact that people are willing to put more money into Bitcoin this year than they are into the NASDAQ, for me, says an awful lot about where we're going, and certainly on the right side of where this conversation needs to be had. And if you want to have a look at it in even smaller numbers, just think about it like this. We only had 2,250 Bitcoin mined this week, and yet ETFs purchased 18,500 Bitcoin this week alone. That supply squeeze is happening. Whether or not that's being reflected right now in the price, doesn't necessarily matter. As long as you've got some skin in the game, you are going to feel a reward from this, because that can't go on and keep the price as sort of ranging as it has been. That is going to catapult off somewhere soon. And we've been in long enough to at least have a decent portion of our bags packed. Whether that be in Bitcoin or just solely in altcoins doesn't necessarily matter. What happens with Bitcoin will have a knock-on effect, maybe not as immediately and maybe not to the same scale with the altcoin market. So yeah, I think we're okay there. One of the other positive news articles that came out, which caught my eye, and now Trump has said this a couple of times, but over the last sort of 10 days maybe, he really has started to sort of, bang his chest about this a little bit more. And this may be because we're leading up to Bitcoin Nashville, which starts tomorrow, but Trump's not speaking until Saturday, saying that actually he may consider utilizing BTC as a hedge against, I know what's the word I'm looking for, prop up the United States reserves. Because as we know, and as we've talked about on this channel, on these talks before, the US dollar is, it is on life support at the moment. We go to this debt clock, we're nearly at $35 trillion worth of debt. Now, last time I spoke to you about this was about 3 months ago. We were just crossing from 33 into 34. So that every 100 days, $1 trillion worth of national debt is added to the market. That's $4 trillion a year. Now, this is a problem. This is a problem that is being kicked down the can for years. But at some stage, some reality is going to have to be brought there. I don't know if Trump is just saying this to score points in the polls, probably. I don't even understand how they would be able to utilize Bitcoin to help solve some of the problems they have with the money printers, with the debt that they're currently going under. But just imagine what that do for the price, not only from a legitimacy point of view, but from actually them having to buy the Bitcoin, that supply squeeze that we talked about. Unless they started, doing what they did back in the 1930s and demanding that everyone turn in their gold, and likewise turn in their Bitcoin, which we know can't actually happen. Yeah, they have to buy it like the rest of us plebs, and that is going to drive the price skyward. Now, what was this article for? Oh yeah, and the other thing is, it's not even that the US debt is increasing by $1 trillion every 100 days. This is from the end of 2023. I can't find where I saw it on Twitter today, but US interest payments already crossed $1 trillion at the end of 2023. It's now at $1.3 trillion a year. They're spending just on the interest payments alone, and that's only going to get worse. So we talk about, something that is broken. This is the epitome of it. I wish I could have found the article, the screenshot on Twitter today, but so much news has happened. My Twitter feed's just exploded. I can't really find anything if I don't pin it straight away. But it's about 1.3 trillion. And so this kind of makes sense. This kind of makes sense from a point of view of just polling, from a point of view of just getting people on board. And as we're going to talk about with the next news article, I truly see cryptocurrencies being a political football over the next 3 or 4 months. We know that Trump is certainly using it as a political football, and maybe the Democrats need to come out swinging with what they're going to do. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this week, it was a bullish week, ETF announcements. We've also got this thing called the Bitcoin Nashville Conference 2024. Donald Trump, as well as a whole load of other incredibly bullish people on cryptocurrency, is going to speak at that. I feel that's going to be, even if it doesn't have a massive implication on the price of Bitcoin in the short term, just more media, more eyes on Bitcoin, on cryptocurrency. And ultimately, we know about it. We need to get retail interested in it. And having it talked about so passionately, so positively by a presidential candidate, think of the airtime he's going to get on media outlets, everything else, the sound bites that are going to be taken, especially with light of what's happened to him over the past 10 days. It's going to get the word out to people that potentially don't really know that much about it. And that's what we need. Unfortunately, how the greater fool works is we need someone to buy our bags later on who thinks they can make more money from it. And that's going to rely on retail coming in. We've positioned ourselves right, but at some stage we're going to have to execute and sell, and we need someone to buy it off us to do that. So having people like Donald Trump talking about this repeatedly, going to these huge events, getting the sound bites, getting it out there on the airwaves, that's what we're going to need. And if he can manufacture a way to spin it into a positive term of saving America, saving their finances, whatever it's going to be, that's going to be the great outcome for us. So that's it there. And I think that's kind of where I was going with the thumbnail and the title of this, about this, this Avenger team. It seems to me like the Republicans have a strong, vocal, well-known set of individuals that are pro cryptocurrency, pro Bitcoin, pro that decentralization, and they're utilizing that. They're banging the drum, whether it be Donald Trump, whether it be his VP nominee, JD Vance, whether it be Senator Lummis, whether it be Elon, who's come out in support of Donald Trump, whether it be Michael Saylor. Now, I must say, I actually don't know how Michael Saylor leans. Maybe he's a Democrat, but I've bunched him in with the Republican side. So if he is, apologies there. But they look at that in terms of the reach that they have from social media and just airwaves and everything else, that team that talk about this so highly. Whereas we've got the Democrat side of things that have been generally quite anti it. Yes, we've seen some rumblings from Biden a few months ago about potentially turning slightly positive towards cryptocurrency, but then polling kind of suggested he was, beating Donald in the polls, and suddenly that narrative just disappeared off the slate. And now where are we? Well, now we're at a position where we know Joe Biden is no longer running for re-election. He has thrown his weight behind his VP, Kamala Harris, and now a lot of other people have done the same. And this is a unique opportunity for the Democrats then, because I still stand by the fact that I think the cryptocurrency will be a political football during this election campaign. It gives her an opportunity to build a narrative from her side of where it is. You can leave what was ever said behind under the Biden sort of presidential one. I was going to say regime, but presidential reign, and also his re-election campaign. And she could start to actually build a more positive spin on where she wants to go with it. Here we go. And I saw again, just before I came live, Mark Cuban has come out to say that actually Kamala Harris's staff have reached out to him to try and ask those questions about cryptocurrency. He said that she has been would be willing to be far more open about cryptocurrencies, about that into business. So again, maybe it's just political polling, pandering, and that. But I like to try and find the positive in anything. The fact that we're opening up, it'd be even better if we had both sides of the political picture having that conversation about cryptocurrency, both trying to say how they could utilize cryptocurrency, even if it's just Bitcoin, to help solve some of the issues that they are having. I think it's a great conversation to have. We don't know where Kamala is ultimately going to end up going with this. And also we don't know what her VP nominations are. And I'll be honest, I don't really know many of the names on this list, but there is an article. I do know Gavin Newsom, but there is an article here which kind of goes with a lot of the main front runners and where they stand on cryptocurrency. And to be fair, I think out of the 6 that I mentioned here, 4 in the past have not been very positive about cryptocurrency, but that was the norm. I think that was on both sides of the political aisle. We had people, in the let's just trash cryptocurrency. So be interesting some of these actually start to change there too, start to try and see some positivity within that. But yeah, I think this is an opportunity for them to try and target some of those voters. Now, going to FUD, I don't have an article from it, but one of the things I saw today is actually, I've seen 2 polls, one saying that Trump is absolutely trouncing Harris in the polls. It's like 68 versus 30 or something ridiculous like that. But the other one I've seen is actually, and it's come out much closer, and I think it's an NBC or it might be an SBC, but I don't know. Poll has come out to suggest that actually Harris is ahead of Trump. Again, potentially that's a bit of FUD because we don't know where she stands with cryptocurrency at the moment, whereas Trump's a little bit bigger. But we know that Bitcoin's price is quite heavily influenced on political shenanigans. I'll say shenanigans. After the assassination attempt, we saw the price of Bitcoin immediately drop once the news broke, but then it climbed immediately after President Trump. He is President Trump, I suppose, isn't it? Because he has been a president, so he gets to hold that title for the rest of his life. President Trump was deemed to be alive. Then we had some uncertainty because we had no idea what was happening with Joe Biden. No one had heard from him for 4 or 5 days. So that uncertainty causing the price to drop. Funnily enough, once he announced that he was out of the campaign, we get some certainty. So price goes back up. Then we didn't know where we were going, but to be fair, the Democrats rallied behind Kamala Harris quite quickly. She isn't actually the Democratic nominee yet. There is a conference in which they need to do that. But once we got that certainty, she was there. Again, we saw a bit of a rally. So we know that Bitcoin's price does move because of this. And it's just going to be a fascinating 3 or 4 months to just see where that goes. Tying in quite nicely with October, that rally that we normally see each year through into Christmas. I think that could take us into some pretty high places into 2025. Okay. Hello. Sorry, I've ignored chat at the moment, but hi to everyone who said hello. And Reese has put my CAS Tau split is currently 100% Tau. It's now a good time to flock 50% to CAS. I'm going to have a look at that one a little bit later on. I've got the CAS Tau chart up. So yeah, we'll see where that one's going. But spoiler alert, potentially, yes, it is. But let's go into a bit more of price action. So here we are. This is on the daily now, Bitcoin price here. We kind of say we didn't actually get to the white trend line, but we have seen, I think certainly on the daily, signs of potential topping and that rolling over at the moment. Now, today's candle, let's see how messy it's going to be if I put it on the hourly. Okay, you can see it's full. I mean, where did today start here? It has been a bit up and down. Last 3 hours have been almost like no trading's happened whatsoever. It's almost like the chart's broken. But we have seen some movement today, but ultimately this candle's still looking pretty red at the moment and a bit of a recovery there. So I would have liked to have seen it get closer to 69,000, 70,000 just to confirm or validate my white line. we are getting relatively close to that after a fairly decent rally. And let's not forget, we were 53,000 only 2 weeks ago. We got up to 68 and a bit thousand, and we're starting to see a pullback. It's not the end of the world. 2 weeks ago, I would have been delighted to be at 66k. It just feels bad because we're down 2k over the last 2 days. There are some things that can potentially help us on the way there, but ultimately looking at levels that may find some sort of recovery, I think it's a big band, isn't it? That's 65 to 63k would be the first area I'm looking at. Whether I'm looking at previous price support from all these clumps in and around here, whether I'm looking at where the 50 EMA is on the daily, and also the Fibonacci level first catching us there. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's where it's going to end up going, and we can have a look at some other charts a little bit later on. But that's where I'm looking. In terms of high block, just a second, I'm wondering why there's an extra BTC chart there. I'll come back to that one. High block, I mean, the levels are pretty uninteresting at the moment. We've got that big clump in and around all-time highs, 73,000. And then we've got this big level down at 51,000. I'm not sure why that's not on my chart. I thought I did it last week and pulled it across. Obviously I didn't. I mustn't have saved it, but it's this one here. It shouldn't be in grey. It should be in these colors. Let's just change it whilst we're here. That'll do. Oh no, I need to change this one as well. That's about right. So that is a level which can come down. But for me, the ones at 73,000 seem like the cleaner target to get towards, but we're not there yet. Now, interestingly, I think now with the Ethereum ETFs, this is probably worth actually following Ethereum at the same time. I'm just making sure it is ETH. I don't think there's enough information. I mean, this seems odd that there's just no long levels between, not really, 3,400 down to like 2,800. It's pretty clean under here, and I'm not sure why. I would have thought the degens here would have been long in the hell out of the launch of the ETFs, but that doesn't seem to be reflected in what we're seeing from the high block point of view. If they are, they're certainly playing it very safe. Normally with a buy the rumor, sell the news event, retail rush in, and this would be bright green and yellow to suggest there, and then would sell the news because market makers would dump that into the actual going live of the event. But unless there's something wrong with how the data is being captured by high block, it certainly doesn't seem like there's that much interest in longs at the moment. There's a lot more interest above here in shorts, maybe suggesting that people are wise to the buy the rumor, sell the news event. But I think we should start following this a little bit more. Maybe I'll even start to build an Ethereum version of the BTC chart. One other thing from a bigger picture, I suppose, just to sort of try and put some positiveness to it. We'll get on the weekly chart here, and I've got the 21 EMA up at the moment. 21 EMA is a bit of an interesting one because you look at previous sort of bull runs, and this is the thing. This, on the weekly, if you want to keep it very high level, you just want to go away for a couple of months, have the weekly, have the 21 EMA, because in bull runs, this is what holds. It's the breaking of that. Now, we're in a bit of a ranging side at the moment, but ultimately, as we stand right now, we are above the 21 EMA. Nothing to be too fearful about. Okay, we may lose it again, as we have been ranging for the last 140 days. I get it. But unless we really start to see price not only below it, but lower lows falling below this, and this clearly starting to dip down, I'm not necessarily too worried. It's effectively just plateauing out at the moment, and with price above that, for me, that's a positive sign to see where we can take this going forward. So 21 EMA weekly chart, that's what you want to be looking at for bull runs. And you go back as far as you want to go back. Historically, it's always shown very strong patterns in bull runs. So there we go. Okay, let's talk about Ethereum just for a little bit. And this is the price action. We've had it on the weekly. This is it on the daily at the moment. And this is what I'm talking about. Whereas with Bitcoin on the daily, we had that sharp move back up. Ignore the last 2 days. Looking very strong there. Almost getting back to the levels that we were at, sort of the top of the range. When we get into Ethereum, we just haven't really had that. And I accept, yes, we have cleared the 50 EMA. And we have basically just been flirting with that for the last, 7 to 10 days. And positively, we have managed to stay above it every time. We've not even wicked below it since we climbed through with that strong green candle on the 15th, so 8 days ago. So you can't fault that. But then again, we've not really made a sharp move. And it has been at least 5 days that we've known ETFs will come in this week. I dare say it's actually probably been longer because it's been rumored that we were going to have this on today for at least a week. But it's not really managed to sort of create that much excitement within the price. People are trying to front run this, and it just feels that actually at the moment this may be topping out. And I will try and maybe put a little bit of positive spin at the moment. So if we just throw what I always like to throw on it, and we put a fib, maybe we can actually see why. I'll zoom in so we can see it a little bit cleaner. My favorite level, the 618. That's exactly where we. Oh, this isn't. No, I'll draw this better. I'll zoomed in. The 618 is where we're battling at the moment. That 3,500 level has been the battleground, and we haven't really been able to convince ourselves to climb above that. And it's called the golden ratio, the golden level, for a reason. That's the strongest one. So, yep, a nice strong rally into it, but unfortunately nothing at the moment. But to be fair, the 50% line, the 0.5, has been holding us. So you could argue we're just in a bit of a holding pattern, just waiting to see what the market wants to do with this latest news. And even as we've been going live now for the last 36 minutes, Ethereum, again, pretty much one of the only green ones out there, but it is climbing. I think probably getting towards the end of the trading day in the US, news of it getting over $1 billion worth of inflows on the first day. It's probably got retail excited to actually go and rush and buy some as well. So that's pretty nice to see. But for me, that 618 level is a telling reason as to why we may have actually struggled. I do like the fact that the 0.5 and the 50 EMA is keeping us up, but we're going to have an explosive move one way or the other. It's either going to have to go up and break that final level, or we're going to lose it. And where do we see ourselves going from there? And I alluded to this a bit earlier on, but I just want to take you back exactly where we were. So this was it. This was the day the ETFs launched, the 11th of January. We had that sharp move up. Everyone got excited. And then what happened? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 13 days of falling. 2 weeks of falling down there before we had that turnaround. And we ended up going from, sub 40,000 to plus 70,000. Huge move that goes there. And I suppose that's my question at the moment, going back to Ethereum, where we sit at the moment. We've had a bit of a move today. Granted, it's not really cleared the highs, but we have had a sharp move up against the rest of what the market has done today. Now are we going to see some tired legs? Going to see some selling? Are we going to see the grayscale pressure of them just selling into it, just negating any of the benefits that we're seeing from the inflows from the other ETFs? And we actually start to see that move down. And if we are going to see that move down, my view is that we're going to probably see a psychological level in and around $3,000. And then by the time you get to $3,000, you kind of think, well, is it actually going to retest the lows that we see here? And so that may be it. And for me, where is the price of Ethereum going next? I'll end the poll now. Thank you for everyone that contributed. I'm with the 50% of you. Oh, sorry. The 25% of you, I'm sure that was the other way around a second ago, that says, I kind of feel that we may actually end up going lower first. I feel like we will play the same pattern that we played in the Bitcoin playbook, and we'll see that drop. But I don't think you should lose hope, and I don't know how far down it's going to go. I would suggest that any Ethereum that you want to pick up between now and the next couple of weeks, even if the price is falling, is going to pale into insignificance into where this price can go. And if we're going to see a run like we saw with BTC, I don't think $7,000-$8,000 Ethereum is off the cards at the end of this year. Now, that might be pie in the sky thinking. I completely get that. But if we start to see the demand that we do and Grayscale stop selling, the only thing that can actually happen is that we're going to buy it. Now, completely understand that it's a different tokenomics in terms of how Ethereum is generated, how much Ethereum is out there for the ETFs to buy. I completely understand that we can't just take it on face value, like for like, with what's going to happen with BTC. But I do see that as being a positive thing. I think when the markets really return in the autumn as well, I think we're going to see some positivity pushing that through. So yes, we may see some short-term turmoil. Yes, we may see the price fall back down. But I don't think it will be too long before we see I was going to say new all-time highs, but certainly that 4,000 level hit. I can't remember. What was the previous all-time high? I mean, look, 4,800, and even taking it off this here, and I didn't draw these out beforehand to have a look, but you have a look at the 618. The 1618 is pretty much the previous all-time high. Then you got the 2618 at 5.5. You got the 3618 at 6.5. You know, these are levels that you're going to have to try and utilize because we don't know when we get into price discovery. And I think Fibonacci's can be a really good one. Obviously, if I was going to draw this more accurately, I'd do it on a bigger time frame so I could actually get a whole picture of the move, so a whole visualization of the move. But even just spawningly, flukily drawing these, I think it's given us some good indications of where it's going. So yeah, I'm not necessarily too worried. I haven't sold anything leading up to this today, and even if this week ends up red, that doesn't necessarily scare me. I think these things happen. We can't have some positive inflows on Bitcoin and everything else without having the pullbacks, without having, if you want to call them, the shakedowns. So yeah, but good to see. And I'm going to go back to BTC now, but hopefully you'll be able to see this. Let me just get rid of this. There's a lot of information on this chart here. Let me get rid of it. So I don't know if you're going to be able to see this clearly. I hope you do. What you've got at the moment, you've got 4 Bitcoin charts on your screen. On the left, you've got effectively the first bull run, 2011 to around about 2014. Then the next one, you got 2014 to 2017, 18, 2018 to 2021 bull run, and then you got this bull run coming up. Now, if this chart, if these figures and lines look crazy, it's because it's on the linear. It's not on the logarithmic. I normally use the logarithmic, so you could argue that I'm cheating. I'm doing this for effect because what I'm trying to show you is what we've been experiencing over the last 142 days, 143 days is actually kind of normal. Nothing to necessarily be too concerned about, and it is a prelude for an explosion that is going to come, and it's going to pretty much rock your world. Charles, I will certainly answer that question for you in a moment. Let me just carry on my train of thought, but I'll get back to you there. So what we've got on the first one is we had the halving. Now, the first bull cycle, halving was a little different because it was actually at the end of the year. It was in November. Normally, they're sort of like summer, springtime. But this one was. Then what we did, we saw a little bit of price movement, and then we saw, this is a 2-week chart. I should have said that, sorry. But we saw around about 3.5 months worth of ranging activity before the price went from $80 to $1,240. A massive move. So at the time, the price there was fluctuating anywhere, even on the candle closes, from 140 down to 80. That would have felt like monster moves. But in hindsight, it was ranging. We see that massive spike up. We get to this one here. Now, that previous chart, this massive green spike up is actually, now we're on the linear, just that little blip there. That's why I use the linear. I want to shock and awe. Just kind of show you. That massive move is that tiny blip there. Anyway, we fast forward, halving happens. We get to another period of ranging. 8 bars this time. I mean, I could have dragged it out to 9, maybe moved one to the left, but arguably it is 8 bars there. So around about just under 3 months. And then what happens? Monster move through 2017, taking it from $1,000 to just shy of $20,000. Great move to be had. Okay, I think you know where I'm going with this one. Move on to the next chart. That monster move there is encapsulated with, let me just draw it so you can see this element here. And then what did we have? We had the halving, and then down here, and again, I know it's hard to see, but there we had 9 candles. So another 120 days circa of just ranging. And again, ranging from 7,000 to 12,000, back down again. Big moves, 50, 40% falls, climbs, doubling your price, 40% back down. Before 2 tops on this cycle. I wasn't really too sure, but I thought I'd do it to the honest one. All the way up to 68,000. Okay, so from 8,000 to 68,000. Monster move happened again. What are we experiencing right now? Now, what I will say is I've talked about everything post-halving. So doing this from post-halving, we've actually only had 6 candles at the moment. So just under 3 months. So maybe we've got another month of sort of sideways action, but we've also actually experienced pretty much a month before that, because actually this has been going back to the end of February, beginning of March. But we've seen an activity of ranging, some big moves, 72K down to 50K, back up to 68K. Okay, those moves happen. They hurt at the time. Some of us get rattled, some of us get scared, some of us get nervous. But what I'm saying is, don't be the person that then, oops, didn't want to draw that potentially misses out on, yeah, I'll get an arrow because it's going to be easier to draw, that move. I don't know where it's going to go, but if it's anything like the other charts, that's what it's going to look like, and it's going to be pretty high when it does it. And what I will say, and I mentioned this at the beginning, is evidence has suggested, with the exception of the last bull run, these moves happen pretty quick and they're over pretty quick after the range happens. You know, we're talking maybe another 6 months. Whereas in our mindset at the moment, we're looking at probably another 15 months before the market peak. So I don't want to be talking about left-leaning cycles or anything else like that, but we'll know, we'll feel when the move happens. You'll know when the move is happening. You'll know when it's feeling parabolic, because you cannot work through looking at your Delta portfolio and just seeing how much it's gone up, how much percentage value it's gone up each day. That's when you know it's starting to get crazy. And whether that happens in 6 months' time or whether it happens in 15 months' time, that should be one of the alarm bells for you. Doesn't mean you need to jump out straight away, but perhaps you need to consider whether or not other factors are suggesting we're getting to a peak earlier. And I don't want to detract from that. But this, to me, it says a lot of what's happened in the past is clearly repeating right now. And whilst it feels crazy because the numbers are bigger now, when we were talking about $130 to $80, we wouldn't have cared. But now we're talking about $72,000 to $53,000. It's a big number, but it's the same percentage move. And that means, in theory, it's the same percentage move up. Okay. And so I know I've talked about 140, 150,000 BTC. I don't know if I'm just being a bit overly pessimistic there, whether or not you're stock to flow or your power law. You know, the range of where we can go is anywhere from 140 to around about 450,000 this cycle. So let's just stick it in the middle and go with 250. I'd be happy with 250 BTC. I did this one on total market cap just because, you know, it's a similar thing, and maybe this gives us a bit of an indication of where altcoins may go. Now, obviously, the first bull market, there weren't many. It was just pretty much BTC, okay? Then we get into the second, and suddenly altcoins are coming back on. You can kind of see I've reflected the same period. So 8 bars there, have a bit of a ranging pattern, move up. Then in the last bull cycle, the 9 bars, that was in this period here, we see that move up. And it's crazy to think, look, after the COVID crash, this is total market cap. This is including BTC. But after the COVID crash, the entire crypto market was $150 billion, which is just wild when you think about it. But in this period we're talking about, it was, you know, $250 to $360 billion, including BTC. And we managed to get to 3 trillion. So that huge move there. I forgot to put it on, but you know where it is, the price, the ranging pattern we're in here. It's still there. Okay. And we're ranging from 2 trillion to around about 2.6 trillion. Now, you know, I don't think we'll get a 10x, and we're certainly not going to get a 30x like we got there. But even if we get a 5x, it's $10 trillion. Okay. $10 trillion, 30% market cap for BTC. 20 million on. I should have done this maths beforehand. So that's going to be 3 trillion. Plus there's going to be, let me get a calculator out. Might as well get this figure right, hadn't I? I'll just get my phone out. Apologies. I started a conversation and I've got my socks on, so I can't work it out. But let's see. Say it's 40%. So that would be 4 trillion. I've just done 40 trillion. Done 40 trillion again. I can't seem to help myself. Right, last time of doing this, otherwise I'll just give up. It's a million, a billion, trillion, divided by, let's just call it 20 million. And we're talking 200,000 BTC there. It's a long time for me to work that out. I'm sure I could have done it much sooner. 200,000 BTC. That's at 40% market cap. We get to 10 trillion. I'm going to be happy with that. That's a 5x from this ranging period we currently find ourselves in. So for those who are in altcoins, and we may see that even bigger explosive growth, credible places to be, I think we can all agree. Okay, let's move on to, one other thing, someone sent me this as a private message because I talked about hash ribbons a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying that it's a bit of a fuddy video call for that week. I was talking about how hash ribbons are in the decline, which is not a particularly good place to be, and they've rightly come back and said, well, we haven't had that crossover between the pink and the blue. So this is the 30-day and the 60-day. So for those of you that can't remember, where's the right one? It's just it's about minor capitulation, and then the 30-day moving average, which is the blue one, and the 60-day moving average of the price. And they've almost crossed over again, and that will change the color into a light pink and will effectively show that the risk of the minor capitulation, the FUD, etc., is over, and we're about to move into positive swings. So a couple more weeks and we may see that, but we're certainly seeing a tick up at the moment, and see where that goes. And then once that gets back into white territory, that's where we're back into it's time to climb sort of a region. So yes, we're not out the woods, because of course it could just roll over and fall away. But I think just because they sent me it this week, it caught my attention. Maybe we should just keep monitoring that again, just to see where it is going. Reese, I'm going to talk about your TAL, because I'm going to move on to altcoins in a moment. But just to catch on to Charles's thing, explaining the implications of KYC for Mexi and what it will do if you're based in the UK. Okay, so it sucks to be in the UK at the moment. Because we are so antiquated in where we are, that it feels like if you are to KYC with some of these exchanges, you might be shooting yourself in the future. But obviously, up until recently, you could join Mexi without having to KYC. You could trade as you saw fit. Now, I haven't been on Mexi in a while, so you'll have to excuse me. When I joined Mexi, I fully KYC'd myself, and at the time I did have access to every facet of Mexi. But since the rules have come in that you have to, I don't know if it's necessarily changed. What does it really mean for us in the UK? It doesn't stop you from utilizing Mexi. And at the moment, it doesn't stop you from utilizing tokens that were on there pre the requirement of you having to have KYC'd yourself. What it may have done, and I have to double check, is if Mexi are requiring KYC to meet requirements set out by the FCA in terms of who can access what products that they are offering, when you do undertake your KYC, you may find that things like trading perps, derivatives, maybe even using staking functions within there are no longer available to you, much like it is on Bybit, much like it is on Binance, etc. Now, as I'm aware, I don't think they are fully compliant with what the FCA's requirements are, because any new token that launches on their platform is still available to us, whereas new tokens after October 2023, if you are trying to be, I can't remember what rule it is, I can't remember what the name of it is, but the rule that was brought out by the FCA in October 2023 for the likes of Binance, where you have to now KYC yourself, though any new token that's launched on their platform forever, you are no longer available to. The key one being their TAL, when it launched on Binance, it's not available to us. So Charles, I've never been afraid personally of KYCing. I think that might come and bite me in the butt, because I've KYC'd myself as much as I can on every single exchange I've used. So, giving my passport, my address, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes you need it for depending on how much you want to withdraw. And again, the level in which you KYC yourself may impact how much you are able to withdraw every 24-hour period. Now, unless you're an absolute whale, even the level 1 levels are pretty good. But, don't know where you sit in terms of your terms, and we never know what the future's going to be. And that tiny little, 8,000 ranking coin market cap that you hold 99% of the supply may moon, and you may be the ultimate whale. So, but I don't think it's really going to restrict you. The reason I can't talk with much authority on it, unfortunately for you, Charles, is I don't really use Mexi anymore. Not because I don't like Mexi as an exchange, but I'm pretty good with doing my taxes, and just getting the information off Mexi through an API is very difficult to put that into my tax return. And so if I don't keep up with it and then I miss a 30-day window, it's really tough to reconcile that properly. So I've just, unless I absolutely have to, just have stopped using it, because the likes of KuCoin, which do CAS, which do Tau, which do most other tokens that are launched. That's got a much simpler API for me to be able to link to my taxing software. So that's why I can't give you 100% certainty on the answer. But as I'm aware, most functions should still be available to you. The problem we now have when we do KYC is they know who we are, they know where we're based. So should the UK regulations get stricter, they can auto shut us off. Whereas if we hadn't KYC'd ourselves in the first place, maybe there was a way which we can circumnavigate around that. And to give you an example, I tried to do that for Binance. And I've got a Spanish bank account. The wife's got a property in Spain. I suppose I've got property in Spain as well then. But I thought, right, well, I'll set up an EU-based Binance account. But because I'd KYC'd with the UK, they just knew that I was trying to set one up. Even though I tried to give a different email address, they were able to say you'd have to close your current one. So once you KYC, they've got you. So yeah, it is difficult. I'm still hoping, one, that Trump gets in, changes his views on cryptocurrency, and then like the lapdogs that we've always been, the UK and the EU, we just follow suit with whatever the US end up doing, and we find that actually terms relax. That's what I'm hoping. There's no sign that that's actually going to happen. But yeah, that's where we sit. Right, let's move on to some altcoins. We'll talk about Tau to start off with. So yeah, this is where we were, and that picture from last week, we're talking about that 360 level. I mean, it was great, a nice strong 7 days of just climbing up out of some pretty significant lows there, breaching through the 10, the 20, the 50 EMA outside the climb, even climbing above the resistance line that we've had since pretty much the beginning of March. Was great to see. And as I mentioned last week, the only real hurdle that was left was that 360 200 EMA. And it now seems like that is what has turned us around. And I think it's fair to say that that is now, after 5 days, a clear rejection from that. Sadly, today's candle, although we'd fought it for a few days beforehand, has taken us, one, back into the 50 EMA cloud, two, below the 10 EMA, and as it stands at the moment, even below the 50 EMA, although we have had a little bounce off the 20 EMA down there. So, yeah, it's running back down and through, unfortunately. And again, all that we've really done, because we wanted to clear that 410 level. So we've actually made a lower high in doing that, which at the moment suggests a continuation of the downtrend. And so I got to do some thinking, I suppose, because I've been ladder buying in and, I've had some good buys here, but do I just sit on it and just let it go all the way back down to a lower level? Or do I actually get out now, bank a bit of profit from these ones that I've took here and just wait till we get lower? I really need to have a think about that from not just a studying the chart, but just a mindset point of view, because I've done a lot of side steps on Tau recently, and I don't want to be caught out by just being greedy, trying to do one final one. But if we just put a fib on from top to bottom of this whole move down, around there, no. I mean, it kind of got above the 382 before it turned away, so I don't want to try and fix it unless I went wick to wick, but even that's not going to make it look any better, to be fair. So stick body to body, because that's what I normally do. And yeah, okay, it kind of turned around there. Maybe you could argue it got slightly above the 382, but that 340 to 360 level was a clear turnaround. I think it for me, it probably got enough ground away from the 382 to suggest it had broken free of that. But like a magnet, it's pulled it back down. And now that 286, bottom of the cloud, maybe that's the next level. But I'm still sticking with my 275 down to 265 buys at the moment. I'm trying to think why I did that level. I can only think that we drew maybe this one. No, I don't know why. I don't know why I drew that level. But that's the level that I've got my buys currently at the moment, just to see whether or not we go there. I'm still very significantly back in Tau at the moment, just a little bit left. That if I can get it, fine. If I was kind of, to be honest with you, the success that we had the climbing out there, I kind of thought that maybe that was just going to be a wasted buy and I'd move it into something else. But yeah, we will wait and see where that one sits. But Maybe I'll be surprised and the 20 EMA holds it, but you kind of have a look on the downtrend. The 20 EMA acts more as resistance rather than support. So I kind of feel it's got some work to do. You know, we zoom in a lot closer. The 10, the 20, and the 50 are all right next to each other. We need some sort of push from that to get us through. We go down onto, I don't know what the 12s are going to tell us. Okay, we've got some movement down to the 12. Maybe to hit the 50 there. Maybe we see a bounce from that. Maybe it is just a Kobo. You know, that W formation, we've had that rise one out. It's coming back down. We bounce and go through. Maybe that is what it is, and I'm being too pessimistic on the pullback. And hell, I'd like that to be the case. 4 hour. We got one. I don't know if we count that as one. It kind of looks pretty clean, to be fair. Is this two? We see a third one going up. Maybe that's what it is. So yeah, we'll just have a wait and see with that one. Dot. Yeah. I'm going to do a bit, well, maybe not a video, but I wanted to put a bit of a note together about some of the stuff that came out from a fundamental point of view of Dot recently. I don't know. I preach about not being married to your bags. I kind of feel like maybe I am, but I do like some of the news that's come out there. It's not reflecting in the price right now, to be fair, though. So maybe I just need to have a bit more of a view from that. But there's some good things that came out of Polkadot Decoded, I think, in terms of how they're going to be managing this going forward. CAS. So CAS on the 4 hour, I'm just liking it. And as I said, I know there was an announcement earlier on today, flopping between Tau and CAS, and there's a big green candle right around the time of it. But even on the 4 hour, I showed you the weekly early, and you've seen the daily looking strong. 4 hour, it's still, it's higher highs and higher lows. I'm all for that. Yet we dip below the 50. We're just over it at the moment. I don't think there's anything to get too excited about. When you're down on the 4 hour, the 50 gets broken quite a lot. But I'd rather be north of it than south of it. So good to see, and good strong action today in a sea of red. So yeah. Interesting having a look at the views from Simon, sort of like that trap 5 and that potential trade he was having and where things are going. I think, look at it from a fundamental point of view. We've also got the KRC20 relaunch next month. And then if you do buy into the TA and the trading patterns and all of that, it's also suggesting that we might have that next spring. So if you're wanting to buy some more, I don't think you're going to feel bad about owning CAS at 17.7 in 6 months' time. I think, now would be a good price for that. Link near Render, all kind of looking the same. Render had a good move yesterday or this morning, a strong move back down. I don't know if that was caused some positivity. But to have a look at Reese's statement there. So this is the CAS or the Tau CAS chart here. Just having a look at that ratio. And basically, if this is falling down, then the strength of CAS is increasing against Tau. So what we had for a long time, which makes sense if you think about it, since the Binance listing, Tau has basically priced, I wouldn't say it's been in free fall, but it's been dropping aggressively, whilst CAS has been climbing. So this has been dropping because the power of Tau versus CAS hasn't really worked out. Now, what we did is we had a bit of a bottoming pattern. I think Greg even played it and actually swapped in and out there. So well played for that move. And we've had some sort of move up. Now, it kind of looks like it does. Even without zooming in, it is the 4 hour. It does look like maybe a double top, some sort of topping pattern here. To answer your question, is now a good time to flop 50% into CAS? I'd be monitoring. Obviously, we've had a strong candle there. It is a red vector candle, so maybe we have a retest of that. But look at what we're below, even on the 4 hour. Everything. We're below everything. 800, 10, 20, 50, 200. We're back below this. It feels like CAS is in a better position to take advantage of this. And if you want to have a look at it from just other simple TA, we're in a downtrend. What defines a downtrend? It is lower highs and lower lows. That's exactly what we've been experiencing, isn't it? Bang, 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 bang. I suppose that one is, well, it's not actually higher than that one. And then we've had that rejection. So maybe we now start to see that move down to that 1,000, taking off this green vector candle here. Even if Tau doesn't do anything over the next month, if Kaz, the KRC20 launch actually is a success this time, that could be another catalyst to push that one through. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to flop into it. Whether it's worth putting 50% in, I'm going to leave that to your own risk appetite. It's quite a lot in case it goes wrong. But I suppose, what's your ultimate long-term goal? Do you want more Tau or do you want more Kaz? And I suppose if you're trying to do the flip-flop, there is no risk, or there is no reward without risk. So maybe actually it is worth potentially moving that forward. The Kaz that I own in the back of my head is probably going to be flipped into Tau. So I'm not taking any at the moment. I am looking at potentially maybe not buying the Tau that I've got registered. Maybe cancel those. Maybe that's what I need to look at, is cancel that Tau order and actually just buy Kaz instead, with the intention of monitoring the amount that I get a Kaz and flipping that into Tau. Maybe that's the move. So thanks for that, Reese. I think I'm going to add that to my thought process for later on. Pound's a piece of shit. If I take this move, it's going to go the other way. So I do apologize in advance there. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm sort of looking from that. Other ones I'm looking at, I've been looking at Ondo. Again, I haven't bought any yet. I can't remember who told me about this back in February of last year. I think it might be Migs, and I didn't look at it. It's basically real world asset. It is looking at BlackRock investments, not cryptocurrency. But I still think it's a good player. Real world assets, I think it's going to be a strong memeable side of things. And again, this is something that I may look to get in at. I think I mentioned the story on the Trading Pub last week, but just to conclude it, I've actually, first time in years, I've moved some fiat from my bank back into crypto, mainly because when I looked at my bank, it just deleted that set of account details, which I thought was a bit odd. So I thought I'd send some across. It got held, unsurprisingly, by the bank. However, it's with Barclays, 5-minute conversation with their fraud team, and they were more than happy to then release funds. I asked them if I would have any more problems releasing funds going forwards. They said not unless it was unusual behavior, and if I was looking at moving a big amount, that I should speak to them ahead of time. I don't plan on moving a big amount from fiat into crypto because I've got what I've got in there. But for those of you that, we always have that question, who seems friendly? Barclays certainly seemed friendly. Yes, it was stopped. I knew it would be. But, from them looking at my activity, me telling them what I did for a living, etc., they were fairly certain. And basically the one caveat that I had to agree to was, if it goes wrong, I can't claim my money back. So that's fine. They did ask me what I was going to buy with it. I just lied to them and told them I was buying Bitcoin. Because I thought, don't want to be having a conversation about what Tau is and all that stuff. But yeah, so I do have a bit more money, and I think I might utilize that for the likes of Ondo. But again, is Kaz the play? I feel a bit of a fraud saying that, because I know I've not spoken very well of it, but I'm not bothered about it from a fundamental point of view. I'm bothered about it from how it's doing from a price point of view. And if it's doing this well in a ranging market, imagine what it's going to do when we go full bull. And so it certainly feels to me like maybe there's a better play right now to be in Kaz rather than Tau. So Reese, do with that as you see fit. But yeah, that's where it's at. Alan asked me to have a look at a token, Tensor, TNSR. He said it was a competitor to BitTensor. I'll be honest, I started to have a look into this, Alan. I don't know if you're live or if you're just going to be watching this a little bit later on. It's the website. I don't get BitTensor vibes. This seems to be based on NFT trading, and I could not get any more information on it than what you can see on this screen. So yeah, a little bit disappointing. The tokenomics, and it's not fair launch or any mind or anything like this. There's 36, 50, 44%, 45% is locked up to core contributors, investors, etc. So the balance of tokenomics is not necessarily great. And so I just didn't get the vibes of potential you had. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong Tensor. Maybe there's another Tensor out there, but I wasn't overly enamored with this one. So I didn't look into it too fully. If it's something that you believe in, it is on Solana. They are the NFT gold mine at the moment, so maybe it is worth going through with that. But I'm certainly not putting what little I have left on the side into this. Maybe that will come and bite me in the ass. But that is honestly where I sit. And just one final thing before I get off, and thank you for the 60 plus minutes of your time so far. I came across this today. and I have not looked into it any further, but it caught my attention. If you hold a certain amount of Bitcoin, you can obtain a golden visa for Portugal and granted is the EU citizenship. And we were talking about, people trying to look at how they can avoid. Portugal's very crypto friendly for one. So how you can maybe offset some of this stuff. So I've reached out to them to join the program, as it says there. And I don't really know too much about it. I don't even know if it's a scammy kind of thing. But I just want to see what they've got to offer and what they've got to say. But if we have a look at sort of the golden visa application, let's see what it says here. Yep. So it's Portugal, your window to Europe. Basically, you've got to hold a fairly decent amount of Bitcoin. I think it's like 500,000 worth. But you can apply for your golden visa. Then you get a golden visa. It says for 5 years, but as I understand golden visas, you have to renew them every 2 years. So I'm not sure about that, but you can then actually, after 5 years, it looks like, apply for your Portuguese citizenship. So for any of you that are thinking about long-term, especially us based in the UK with lacks of freedom of movement across Europe and all that kind of stuff at the moment, and you may have some concerns about tax and everything else going forward, maybe this is an opportunity. If it sits right for you, if it sits in terms of sort of size of your portfolios and everything else, and where you see your risk appetite, there it's there. But they also trade in, or hold in BTC, but also in BlackRock ETFs. So there is some element there. I just want to understand what I have to provide. I'm trying to see if it says it here. Okay, investment terms, firmly. So 500,000 euros worth in investment and 10% performance fee, 2% management fee, 100% exposure in BTC. Okay, well, we'll see what they come back with. It's called unboundfund.com. I am not vouching for it or anything else. It just came across me today, and I know we talk about it a lot on trading pubs in terms of where we can have a look at it. And for those of you that perhaps aren't so interested in St. Neats and the Caribbean, maybe this is something that's a bit more usable for you. Any information I get from them, I will, of course, provide back. They ask some weird questions. Like the questions when you have to join the program is, do you have any questions for them? I was like, yeah, I want to know what this is about. That seemed like an obvious question. Asked me if I'd invested in any funds before, which makes sense, and whether or not I understand what cryptocurrency is. So I want to see how professional they are, how it's managed and regulated and all that kind of stuff, obviously, because if it is $500,000 or euros worth, it's a fairly sizable investment. What are the returns and when can I get my money out, etc., etc. So I will let you all know. I think other than that, that's kind of sort of where I'm at the moment. I'm just having a look at Bitcoin's prices. Still at about, just under that 66,000, Tau 310-ish, and Ethereum. Ethereum is just moving today. I think we've got about another 20 minutes or so till the market's close. I didn't talk about it, but I think we've got Google and Tesla quarterlies coming out today. So that could have an implication on the NASDAQ. So bear that one in mind. If it's not today, it's tomorrow, but I'm fairly certain it is today. There's a lot of other big ones out there. So yeah, definitely bear that in mind in terms of sort of what implication those kind of companies can have on the likes of the NASDAQ. But yeah, that's it from me. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in this evening. I appreciate that. I suppose it's about usual length as normal. Haven't had many questions for the last couple of weeks, so I don't know if that's because you just don't like me rabbiting on about that stuff, or I'm answering stuff fully in the first place. But either way, if you do have any questions and you want a bit more of an in-depth review of it, just send it to me in advance. It give me a bit more time to look into it. Other than that, all I'll say is we've got Trading Pub again, 1 o'clock on Thursday. The Cuddle is in a couple of weeks' time. As I mentioned, I'm not at that one, but I will be at the September one. But yeah, other than that, enjoy the rest of your evening. I will update Discord tomorrow with the numbers from the ETFs, the Ethereum ETFs. We can start the speculation of where that may take us. And yeah, I'll speak to you all soon and have a good evening. Cheers now.